What's up guys, welcome to Flux Motion After Effects tutorials. My name is Cameron Perry and I'm going to be showing you how to make this animated loader loop. So let's take a look here. So this is something that I created as kind of like a loader that would go on a website and it would just load, or it would loop. So kind of a cool little thing. You could use it on a website or an app or for whatever else you want to use it for. So let's get into how I created this. We're going to go right up to composition, hit new composition, and let's just name this master comp. I'm going to leave this as 1920 by 1080, 24 frames a second, and I'm just going to leave the duration at 10 seconds long. And let's hit OK, and immediately I'm just going to go create a background, do a white background. And then immediately after that, we will go up to our shape tool here and make sure that ellipse is selected. And let's just create a small circle here. So we'll go down to the drop down here, go under ellipse 1, ellipse path, and then let's change this to 200 by 200 pixels. Okay, and I'm going to use my reposition anchor point here to center my anchor point on the shape, and then I'll use the align panel to align this to the center of the frame. So let's rename our shape to circle or whatever you want to name it, and then we'll duplicate this. So now we have circle 2, and we'll hit the drop down arrow here, go into contents, ellipse 1, ellipse path, and then you'll see that there are size and position properties here. We don't actually need these, and we would rather have a Bezier path. So you're going to right click ellipse path 1 and convert to Bezier path. So now we have a Bezier path, and right here you'll see that we just have a path property. So make sure path is highlighted, and we'll do Command C and copy that path. We'll exit out of that, come into our original circle, and let's go to, actually if we just hit P, that'll pull up our position, and we'll highlight position and do Control V. So that'll paste all of our keyframes. This is the path of the circle, and now our position will now follow that path. So it's now going in a circle. We can now delete this circle 2 layer. We don't need that anymore. Right now it is just orbiting, right? We want it to come out of the center, pop out, and then go around and then back down into the center, if that makes sense. So let me show you how we do that. Let's hit U, bring up our keyframes here, and I'm going to go forward about 4 frames and just make a keyframe right there. And then I'm actually going to go backwards back to our original first keyframe, and let's just drag that into the center. And so now it's kind of coming out of the center and it's going to start going around. We want to do the same thing to this back end here. So let's just go backwards 4 frames, set a keyframe, and then go back to our original end, and we'll drag that to the center as well. Okay, and then let's highlight all of our keyframes here and ease them. So hit F9, and that'll give us some easy ease. And I'm going to modify this path slightly. Right now it's like in a V shape. We want it to look more like this. I want it to be a little smoother as it comes out. And it looks like our circle is a little bit incomplete over here. So let me just see if I can mess with the Bezier here. Okay, perfect. So now we have a perfect circle. And the path looks good. So comes out, goes around, back in. Really janky animation right now. We're going to fix that. So we actually don't even need this keyframe right here, the second to last. We can delete that. So let's do that. And then our first one is happening just way too fast right now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag this forward a little bit, and about 10 frames is where you want it to be. So it's going to come out, go around, and back in. I think I'm going to go about 1 second and 3 frames. So if you take this last keyframe and just drag it to that point, all of these keyframes are going to follow suit, as you've noticed, which is nice. And okay, let's check that out. Okay, so this is about the speed that we want. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to want to do is we want to adjust our scale. We want it to pop out and then we want it to get small and then big again. So let's hit S for scale, and at the 10 frame mark, we'll hit our stopwatch here, set a keyframe for our scale property, and we'll go to the end of our animation, and if you hit U, that'll pull up all of your keyframes. So we'll go to the end of our animation here, and we'll set another keyframe without changing anything. And then let's come to about the center, and I'm just going to scale this down to 50%. So now it's out, gets really small, and then goes big again. And I'm going to ease these, so just F9 again on that. Perfect. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my logo in here. So this is just my logo, and I'm just going to put this on top. Scale it down here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So I'll parent my logo to the circle, so it's going to follow my circle. Okay, so now we are going to rotate our circle so that this logo rotates around as it's going around. So let's come back to the beginning here. We'll hit R for rotation, and we actually don't want it to start rotating until it kind of pops out of that center. So we'll drag it to our 10 frame mark, hit R again, click stopwatch there, set a keyframe, and then we'll go to the end, which is a second and 3 frames. And I'm going to rotate it 360 degrees 3 times. So if you hit 3 right here, that will make it rotate 360 degrees that many times. So it's rotating now. Really janky animation. We are going to ease this as well. So now we've eased that. And then we're going to add an expression onto our rotation here. Right now, it's super stiff. I want it to kind of bounce a little bit at the end. So I'm going to use the inertial bounce expression, and I'll put this in the description. Most experienced After Effects users have used this expression before, and it's really powerful. So let's copy that expression, and we'll hit Alt on our rotation or stopwatch, and let's paste that into our expression box. And I'm going to change the amplitude to 0.3 and the decay to 6.0. So after you've modified that expression, it should look like this. It has a nice little bounce at the end. And you know what? I'm actually going to take my scale here, and I'm going to highlight all of these, hold Alt, and just drag this first one back to the very beginning here. I think that's going to look better. Let's see what that looks like. Still not looking quite the way that I want it, so I'm going to take this keyframe where the scale is 50%, and I'm just going to drag it to my 10 frame mark so it's lined up with everything else here. Let's see what that looks like. Still not quite looking the way that I want it, so I'm actually going to drag my rotation, this first keyframe, to the beginning. Okay, now we're getting there. Now it's looking how I want it. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to make it so that this logo is fading out right before it goes around in its full circle and then fades back on at the end. So let's come to about right here. Right here I kind of want it to start fading off. And we'll hit T for opacity. And let's just make this a really short fade. So I'm just going to do 4 frames, and we'll move that down to 0. And then we want it to come back on before the end of the animation here. So let me set a keyframe right here real quick, and then I'll go backwards 4 frames. I'll set another keyframe for 0. Let's come back here and set this to 100. I'm going to make this fade off just a little bit quicker, so I'm going to drag these 2 keyframes right here at the beginning. And I want this to come fade back on just a little sooner, so I'm going to drag these back. Perfect. Next thing we want to do is we are going to duplicate our circle 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by the way, the shortcut for that is Command D, if you didn't already know. And what we're going to do is we want to offset all of these. So our first one here, we're just going to drag over 1 frame, And let me just zoom in just a little bit here so you can see a little bit better. The second one, we're going to offset 2 frames, third, 3 frames, the fourth, 4, and so on. Okay, so now it's going to look like that, and you'll see this wonky looking thing, right? Okay, so after you've offset all of those, let's highlight all of our duplicates, and let's hit U. We'll bring up all of our keyframes. And all of these end keyframes right here, we want them to all end at the same time. So our ending is at 1 second and 3 frames. So we want to drag all of these back to that point. And like I said, these rove across time keyframes right here in the middle, they'll adjust themselves, which is really nice. You don't have to highlight them all and hold Alt or anything like that. So I've got all of these coming back home at the same time. So now it's going to look like this. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset the scale on all of these. So this first one, the scale at its lowest point is at 50%. We want this to be 45%, just slightly smaller than our original. I'm going to go to our next duplicate, which is circle 3, and for the scale at its lowest point, I'm going to set to 40%. And our next one, I'm going to set to 35%. So I'm going down in 5% increments very slowly. This next one will be 30%. And let's do our last one here. This one will be 25%. So now if you play that back, it's starting to kind of look a little bit more like our final animation. So the next thing here, at the beginning you can see it just looks really clustered and nasty right here. So what we're going to do is we are going to make it so that these layers are not coming on until it kind of pops out of the center. As an example, this first one, circle 6, we are going to hit T for opacity, set a keyframe right there. Let's hit U to bring up all of our keyframes again so we can see where we're at. As you can see, I've got the opacity lined up with the position in the scale keyframes right here that are in the middle. So just line it up with that and then go backwards 3 frames or so. Okay, so it's not coming on until that point. So we've got our opacity at 100% there and 0% here. So let's go on down the line, make sure that it's lined up again with these keyframes right in the middle. We'll hit T for opacity, hit U to bring all those up again, and we'll go backwards 3 frames, set the opacity to 0%. Okay, and on down the line. So you'll see now we don't really see that tail coming out until it starts to go around there. So that's starting to look pretty good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, make sure that no layers are highlighted. We'll hit U and hit U again, and that'll collapse everything. And we're going to highlight our logo and all of our circle layers. We can leave the background here if we want, but we're going to right click and do pre-compose and name it whatever you want. I'm just going to keep mine as pre-comp 1, hit OK. Great, now we have a pre-comp. Okay, let's go over to effects and presets, and we're going to grab our matte choker. So down here, matte choker, let's drag that onto our composition. Now I've preset these parameters. Okay, so geometric softness should be set to 0. We'll set this choke 1 to 0, and gray level softness should be 0%. Okay, and let's hit the stopwatch on all of those that we just adjusted. First 3 there. And we'll hit U to bring up those keyframes down here. And we're going to go to about 13 frames. And we're going to bring our geometric softness up to 60. We're going to bring our choke 1 up to 100. And our gray level softness is going to be at 2%. And then let's go to the end of our animation, which is 1 second and 3 frames. And I'm going to set all these back down to 0. Okay. This isn't quite in the middle, so let's just drag this middle 1 frame over. And let's highlight all of these and ease them. So let's watch this back. Super smooth, right? It looks pretty good. I can see that there is some bumps here. It's a little bumpy, so you can just adjust this if you'd like. You can also go back into your pre-comp, and all of these duplicates that we created earlier, we can go into those and we can fade them out near the end here. So if I wanted to, I could set a keyframe for opacity right here and just fade it out. And the reason that that works is because the bumpiness is only at the end of the animation, right? So if we start to fade them out a little bit earlier, this tail will go away a little bit earlier and it'll be a little bit softer. Not a whole lot. That's why you can adjust these however you'd like. So that is it. Thank you so much for following along. Leave me some feedback in the comment section. I'd love to hear how I did. This is my first tutorial, and hopefully this will be the first of many. So feel free to subscribe. I've got a pretty cool tutorial that I'm working on right now for you all. Check out my Instagram. Give me some feedback on how I did and how I can improve on future classes. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.